Educating the public about how problem gambling affects everyone in the community, including youth, older adults, and families, is essential if we are to be proactive about this problem. And whereas the Florida Council on Compulsive Gambling's 2020 Problem Gambling Awareness Month campaign provides an opportunity for the public, policymakers, educators, businesses, mental health providers, criminal justice professionals, the gaming industry, and others to make known the adverse effects of problem gambling as well as available treatment. And whereas any individual, professional, or organization dedicated to assisting those in need can participate in raising awareness of the problem gambling and available resources by promoting the statewide 24-hour confidential multilingual helpline 888-ADMIT-IT, and whereas the City of Lynn Haven can participate in this nationally recognized Awareness Month through declaration of proclamation of the month of March 2020 as Problem Gambling Awareness Month in the City of Lynn Haven. Now therefore, I, Margot Anderson, Mayor of the City of Lynn Haven, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2020 as Problem Gambling Awareness Month in the City of Lynn Haven. So that seal is there. And the only other things that I have for the Mayor's report, I was participating with Publix in their proclamation as Publix Day in the City of Lynn Haven for all that they do for all of us as residents. And that was a really nice event. Publix, one of the things that they pointed out that was so inspiring is that they are the number one contributor to the United Way, and that's part of the United Way was there to recognize them, and there were several global companies, which Publix is a 7-state grocer, and they rated second globally, so it was pretty inspiring. And if all of you remember, directly after Hurricane Michael, Publix sponsored a citywide Thanksgiving dinner for all of us in Sheffield Park, and it was complete with butterball turkeys and white tablecloths, and it was for everyone. So it was quite an event. And then they came back for our commemorative event this year on October the 10th and did the same thing and provided food to help us with that event. So we are very grateful to all that they've done, as well as many other large corporations. I've spent quite a bit of time just going about the city in the last couple of weeks, talking with people about various issues. One is the paving of the roads, because the roads, which were so beautifully paved, and that project had neared completion about 5 days before Hurricane Michael. Now those roads are sadly back, if not the same, worse than they were before because of the holes and the large trucks that traveled across them. So people are upset about that, and as we move forward with reimbursements from FEMA and can get back to our paving project, we'll be very happy about that. The alleyways came up, especially the one on Florida Avenue where parking is at such a premium. The one behind, if you're familiar with the old bank building, and then going across, moving toward the tax collector's office, that alleyway behind there, there's a lot of concern about that. So I did say I would mention that and try to get an update. And then I did meet with the city manager and the fire chief. If you don't already know that, the fire chief is the official emergency response director for the city. And I did ask them to meet with me and talk about what we'll be talking about tonight, item number 18 on tonight's agenda, which is approving for the commission to approve for our city staff to go ahead and put in place a plan for not necessarily what we're experiencing now with the COVID-19 possible pandemic and emergency situation, which we are at a level 2 now in Florida. But I wanted us to have a written plan for the city of Lynn Haven ready to go, which people would work from home, how would they carry that out, how could we best serve our city employees through this plan, because as you all know, we have to make sure that our city employees are able to take care of themselves and to be where they're supposed to be able to take care of our residents. So it's an equal proposition. So we'll be talking some more about that on item number 18, and I did appreciate our city manager, Mrs. Gaynor, and John DeLange meeting with me this week to talk about that. And that's all I have. So I'll move on to item number 14, which is the commissioner's report, and I'll start with Commissioner Tender.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically this week, is this on?
I maybe tilt it up.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Basically this week I've dealt with numerous different types of items. Trees, trash, yeah, from trees to trash, with a good number of residents, as well as spoke with some of the residents out at Mills Bayou. And that's been about it. City manager's got most of them taken care of right away, and that's it for me this week.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Russell?
Thank you, Mayor. I've just got a few things. First, I want to make sure everybody knows that we have a Lynn Haven mobile library set up at the service center. One of the volunteers reached out to us wanting to make sure that we got the word out to everybody. They are open Monday from 9 a.m. to noon and Thursday from 1 to 4. So if you need a book, feel free to go check them out. If you don't, let somebody else know so they can. I had a couple of meetings with the Rec Park Design Group. The city manager was not kind enough to ask me to be part of that design group, and we've had 2 meetings there. Preliminary drawings look really good, but I just want to let the commission know that preliminary numbers are a little on the scary side. So we're going to have to pare it back and may have to build it in phases to be able to afford putting anything back out there, because construction costs they're estimating at 40%, a 40% increase from prior to the hurricane on construction costs. So, that being said, it's going to cost the city some money to build that. Vicki Gaynor continues to handle any issues that I've got, and I appreciate that. I want to thank the chief, Ramey, and also Kelly Vestini with HR for answering questions and providing me paperwork that I've asked for, information about the insurance for the employees and stuff like that. And just want everybody to know that the due diligence that I've been trying to do with the food trucks. I've talked to the county, Panama City Beach, talked to food truck vendors, and we'll get into that shortly, but just wanted to let you know we're doing our jobs, Also, if you haven't been by King Griffin, I went by there today to check it out, and I'm very pleased with the progress that we're making with that park. And I don't think we'll have fall baseball, but I think we'll have spring baseball for the kids. So I'm excited about that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Aldridge?
Thank you, Mayor. The main thing I've been focusing on for the past couple of weeks, I'd say, is trying to get our reimbursement funds actually put into our bank account. Been setting up meetings, and the city manager and myself have been meeting with, Congressman Dunn's office. We've reached out to Senator Gaynor and speaking with them, and Congressman Trumbull as well. But it's a big push, y'all, and that's one of the reasons, again, we do ask that you'd be patient, because we do understand that it's painful to go through this, but getting the money is painful as well. And I know we've all been through our homes being rebuilt, and we've had to deal with the insurance, and we've had to imagine doing that and then piling on state bureaucracy on top of that. That's what we're dealing with here. So bear with us. I'm working as hard as I can. I promise you to try to get this money coming to all of us to help all of us. And again, just bear with us. And I also want to thank all of the employees, again, of the city of Lynn Haven. They work very hard, and they're rebuilding their lives, and yet they still help us rebuild ours. So I think it goes to say that we have a very good group of employees here at the city of Lynn Haven, and I'm thankful for every one of them and the hard work that they put in. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Aldridge. Commissioner Perno?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to say that the last meeting we had was the day of the Black History in Lynn Haven, and I attended. I was really taken back by going and being a judge for the artwork, and then I attended with Mayor and Vicki that night the celebration, and it was moving. I'll tell you that. But at 1 o'clock that day at the school board, Mr. Miller he received a lifetime achievement award with some other gentleman who really made me wish I grew up here in Bay County. I grew up in Melbourne, Florida, but I told Mr. Hutzfeld, I said, well, he had a connection with every one of these fellows having grown up here, and I was like, Bill, you made me wish I grew up here, just knowing that I could have been taught or mentored by someone like him. So I'd just like to say I really admire you, Mr. Miller, and a life well done. Your service to our community is abounding to me, and I'd just like to thank him for that, and all the other gentlemen who were recognized that day. And I worked with the Rotary Club on our golf tournament, which went off Saturday quite well, and we raised a good amount of money for the Arc of the Bay. And the Arc of the Bay is having they're going to have their meal programs this coming Friday and every Friday for for the month of March. So if you can get to one of their Friday meals, and it's a $10 ticket, but all the proceeds go to the Ark of the Bay, and it's a good thing. So we'll be participating in that too. And I did meet with citizens about several of their concerns. I did talk to several people in the last few days about the food trucks and where we're going with that. And I met with the city manager, and I had a couple phone calls with the city engineer. So I'd just like to say working on issues when they're presented to me, and I'm always here to help citizens of Lynn Haven. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Perno, and thank you to all the commissioners for all that you're doing. If I could go back just for a moment on what Commissioner Perno said, Mr. Leon Miller, the award that he received was for lifetime achievement in education and a lifetime of giving in education. And I also wanted to call to mention that he was our first African-American commissioner in the city of Lynn Haven, and he's touched so many lives. So on that note, if you don't mind, I just want to stand and give him a round of applause. And since the storm, his powerful prayers have been a lot of what have helped me to get through each one of the commission meetings. So I love his prayers. They rain down heaven on us. So moving on to item number 5, this will be our city manager's report. This is Mrs. Vicki Gaynor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to ask before I get started if our Public Works Director, Bobby Baker, would just come up and give a brief summary of our paving throughout the city, Mayor, since you mentioned that, and just tell you where we are and what we're getting ready to do there. Thank you.
Good evening. On the agenda tonight, we are talking about some of the paving. We've got some legislative appropriations that have been approved. We're going to start paving. Well, if you award the bid tonight, we'll start back on 5th Street from Tennessee to Illinois. Then we'll be doing Minnesota Avenue from 9th to 17th, and 11th Street from Ohio to Illinois. That'll be on the agenda tonight. We already have a program in for paving, but we're having to wait for all the water and sewer lines to get constructed. So it looks worse before it gets better. So especially on the east side of town, a lot of the roads are tore up, putting in the water and sewer, but as soon as they're done, we're set up to pave right behind them. So it's coming. We're just being held up by some utility work right now. Okay. So you probably next 30 to 60 days, you'll see a lot of paving starting back up again.
I think that'll be good news for everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. And we do have a map on the website, do we not, that shows the progress of the paving as we go?
Yes,
Okay.
we
So
do.
on the city websites, you can see what streets are being paved and what's next in line as we move along.
Thank you, Bobby. Mayor, a couple other things. As Commissioner Aldridge has talked about, we are very much diligent in trying to get our reimbursements from the state. We have some reimbursements that are out there, been out there for a while. And so we're working with the state. I am constantly on the phone asking where is our money for the city of Lynn Haven, and we will continue this fight until we get every bit of reimbursement that belongs to us. We will begin some workshops in the next couple of months about the rebuild process. We are definitely in rebuild process. We have awarded 3 firms to do our design, and we've been working diligently with them, meeting, getting some preliminary scopes of work, and just some preliminaries, renderings of what we think the city will look like. Once that's informed, we want to start our workshops, and of course the public will be involved. The first workshop we are going to schedule for March 23rd at 8:30, and that's really a workshop for the commissioners, commissioner come in and ask the questions to some of the firms about some of the concepts that they put together, go back and then really start to dig in to put together some renderings of those particular buildings. Remember, we will be doing buildings, old city hall, new city hall, PD, chamber, library, public works, fire station, senior center. There are a lot of buildings here to be rebuilt, but we are well on our way because we do have 3 firms in place to make that happen for us. We are going to bid the fencing proposal back out because we needed to make some changes to it so that it encompassed a larger scope of work, and so that'll be coming out pretty soon. Now that the garden club is open, we can now rent it out, and believe it or not, we've had several people to already go in and put in for that request to rent out the garden club. If you'd like to rent that garden club out, you can reach out to Taylor Holmes, and she's part of the Community Services Department, and she'll be able to help you. And Mayor, that's my report.
Thank you. Taylor, do you mind standing so everybody can see who you are? Taylor is over the rental of that facility, so that's who you're looking for. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Item number 6 on tonight's agenda is the city attorney's report.
No report at this time, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Albritton. And then we move to item number 7. Item number 7 is the public commentary, and we ask, unless you're unable to come to the microphone, that you would come to the microphone with anything that you'd like to address the commission about. Keeping in mind that the way that I run the meeting as the mayor, as we do each item on the agenda, I also permit comment item by item. So if you want to wait until the item comes up, you can do that. Or if you have something that's even not on the agenda that you want to talk about, you're free to do that. Mrs. Tennell, did you want to lead off tonight with public commentary? And you may do that from where you are. Okay. And I think that is such a fair question, Mrs. Tennell. I know that after the storm, there were so many things, it's pre-storm and after the storm and all that, but there were some issues about a place to have it, and there were some issues, about having enough electricity, those kinds of things. But I think we're moving in a direction where we'll soon have, some viable locations, and I know I've had a lot of people ask me about it. I miss it as well. And yes, that might work out. Those tomato sandwiches are coming, yes. So would the commission join with me, and maybe let's ask the city staff to look into what we could do to consider bringing that back? Does anyone have something that you'd like to mention about it, to follow up with Ms. Tennell? Any objections to having staff just look at the viability of doing that soon? Okay, I think Mrs. Tennell, the staff's going to look at it and see what comes up. Anyone else during public commentary? Yes, sir, go ahead.
I talked with
Can you
Mr.
tilt it up a little bit so we can hear you? Thank you.
I talked with Mr. Yankee about the director of it's the director of volunteers, which
Okay.
is Karen McKay, and so she so I just want to get
For the
book-
library, is that what we're talking about?
Yes,
Okay, the group of volunteers for the library, okay.
So it's the bookmobile needs to be moved. It needs to be moved to the it needs to be moved primarily to the back. So the trailer is in the there's a trailer right now, I think, that's in the library parking lot.
Okay.
But
So you think another location would be more viable than where it is now?
yes,
Okay.
Yes.
All right,
It
we'll
would be
look at
another
that.
location. And it's either in front of the senior center or in front of or next to Sheffield Park or
You're speaking of visibility more, is that what you're?
yes.
Okay, okay.
Yes. And that's what I want.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing that with us. Anyone else tonight? Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Last year, the Lynn Haven Heritage Society hosted the Memorial Day ceremony for the first time, and we would like to permission from this council to do that again on Saturday, May 30th at 10 o'clock in the morning. And we'd also need the key, since it's Saturday and I don't know how much of the city would be available, staff would be available if we could have access to the key to unlatch the flag, so on the flagpole, so we can raise it.
I'm sure that that's something that, if I could have a motion to approve this from the commission, please.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve a ceremony in the park for the Heritage Society on May the 30th at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they'll need access to the flagpole key and probably some other amenities to make that go forward. So we've had a motion and a second. Any discussion from the commission? Any from the public? Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, so it stands approved. Good luck with that ceremony. We'll look forward to it. Any other items on that you'd like to talk about? Yes, Mrs. Harrison. No, because we're on YouTube and it will pick up what you're saying. So,
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Building on what the gentleman said about the mobile library, one of the volunteers, and Mr. Yankee's been very responsive to an email that I sent, and I know Ms. Gaynor and you, Mayor, have about promoting it more on your Facebook page and announcing. The hours are so limited at this point. We would love to have approval to get some sort of a yard sign or a sandwich board or something, whether we move the bus or not, so the public driving by can see when the hours are open. And I understand there's some sort of an ordinance that we may have to.
well, the ordinance was
around.
approved a while back, though, that you can have a sign out during the day, just to, to advertise something,
Okay.
and we can just set it out there and take it back in. I don't see any problem with that. Anybody on the commission have a problem with that?
Great.
So,
Okay.
Mrs. Gaynor, do you think we could get a sign made for them? Okay.
That was going to be my next thing. Okay, are y'all going to cough up the money for it?
We
Thank you.
actually have an in-house sign maker,
Okay.
so we can
Great.
we
yeah.
can
It's
move
such a
forward with
neat
that.
resource.
Yes,
would
and we
like more
appreciate you.
visitors.
We appreciate you and all the other volunteers. If you're not familiar with Sandy Harrison, she is the former principal of Mosley High School, and she's giving her time with our library. So thank you so much, and all the other volunteers as well. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on anything tonight that's not on the agenda or on the agenda? Okay. Did I miss anybody? All right, that takes us to the end of public commentary. We'll move on to the consent agenda. There are 3 items: the minutes approval from the last meeting of February 25th. The approval, this one, to give Mayor Anderson the authorization to sign release for any and all documents from Carr, Riggs, and Ingram LLC to James Moore CPAs and Consultants, and the approval to appoint Robert Waddell to the Board of Adjustments. I would like to give a little information to the commission on number 9, so that you know what you're approving. When I became mayor in 2015, I immediately went on I won't call it a rampage, but I ask almost at every meeting that we have a new auditing firm for the city of Lynn Haven, because we'd had the same one for almost 25 years, and I thought we needed a new auditing firm. It was not because I disliked them or anything. I just wanted to start out as mayor with a fresh accounting system. So there were some disharmony type moments between myself and this particular firm over the last months, in particular as the commission voted to change to a new firm. And so now they're asking for me to sign the authorization for them to send all the documents over for the new firm that we voted for, James Moore. Unless we're in an emergency situation, I don't have the authority to do that. And so I asked Mrs. Gaynor to place this on the agenda and to get the commission approval for me to sign those documents. Mrs. Gaynor should be able to sign that, but they don't want to accept it from her. They want the mayor's signature. So if you all would make a motion in a second, well, we're going to do the consent agenda, but if you want to pull that out for some reason or discuss it. But I just didn't want to take that authority, which I don't really have, to sign that unless we were in an emergency situation. So if I could have approval for that as we go forward.
So
Do I need to pull that out, or can I just leave it in there?
Not unless the commission has questions.
Okay.
about a specific thing. Any individual member can pull it out, or they can approve the consent agenda as it stands.
Okay. Commissioner Russell, yeah.
Mayor, if you may, not that I have any problems giving you permission or whatever to sign this, but I have a question about the wording. So can we pull this out to discuss this, please?
Yes, go ahead. And you
So
want to
Take it out now?
yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
If you can, I'd like to ask the attorney, why are they limiting us on the purpose for the documents? This information is our information. It was an audit paid for by the city of Lynn Haven, and they are trying to limit the reason that we're using the material.
That's
May
good.
I, Mr. Albritton, before you jump in? and then I'll let you come on top of. I know, but if I may, this has been an ongoing thing even back months ago when we were trying to get our audit because we needed our audit for FEMA, and they wouldn't even release the audit. They wouldn't give us anything, and it's very personally directed at me. I accept that, and I'm sorry because I'm the one who asked for us to change firms. That's what I believe. Mr. Albritton, would you like to go ahead?
That's a good question, and if we can't get cooperation after this authorization is signed, if we can't get sufficient cooperation, then we'll have to look at alternative means.
Okay. Mayor, if I may, I'd like to ask another question.
Okay.
Hypothetical situation. Our current auditors are going through the paperwork and they find something, not saying there is anything nefarious there, but they find something. Does this preclude us from being able to find that, use that information? Because we're saying that our sole use is for the understanding of the city of Lynn Haven.
I don't think this precludes us. If we found that there was professional malfeasance or negligence from CRI, I don't think this would preclude any possible action if there was some. I mean, that's a very hypothetical question.
Well, that's why I said hypothetical. I just don't want to. I don't want to tie the city's hands, you know. So
I don't believe it is. I think that CRI's wants to be very meticulous in their documentation and who signs for whatever reasons that they have. If this is not sufficient to provide the information to our new auditing firm, then I think the city, I would recommend that we look to maybe going to meet with CRI to see what else we can do to get this this process moving.
all right, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions from commission? Any from the public? There appear to be none. So for the consent agenda, there's a movement to approve and a second. Ms. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. So the consent agenda stands approved. We'll move. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I felt like we did something funky, didn't we? Yes, just
We
now.
can approve 8 and 10 on the consent agenda, but number 9
was
needs
pulled
to
out.
be a separate approval.
Because we pulled it out. I do apologize. So 8 and 10 have been approved, and now we need to have number 9 approved. Is there a motion to approve number 9?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion about number 9? Any from the public? Yes, Mr. Walker.
Quick question. This deals with the audit firm. What about the special audit that we're having?
This is-
We're going to have the same problem?
This is totally disconnected from
Yeah.
that. I
We won't
can't
have that
predict the
same
future.
problem.
I
Okay.
don't know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions from the public? Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll for approval of number 9?
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
No.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. And I would say that it is approved, and I would further say, just for public record, that this mayor has no ill will or ill feelings toward Car Riggs and Ingram at all, and I'm sorry that that we've had to go through this process. So thank you. Moving on to old business, item number 11. Second reading of ordinance number 1089 regarding the city manager's vesting period. City attorney, would you give us the report on this, please? And this is an action required item.
Yes, and Mayor, if I could turn this over to Commissioner Aldridge, since
Yes.
he had requested to table it at the last meeting. I think he has an update at this point.
Thank you.
Yes, I do. Adam, could you read though the actual what we're voting on, the vesting period for the public to be able to
Mayor,
hear
I
that?
don't think we can hear Mr.
You're gonna pull up.
I'm not close enough. Okay. I was asking Adam if he could read.
I don't know if it's on or
It should be on. Hello?
you just have to bring it really close. They're not directional mics.
Come on, Brittany.
Mr. Albritton, go ahead, sir.
Ordinance number 1089, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending Article 5, Section 50-174, providing for a 5-year vesting period for Vicky L. Gaynor, providing for repealer, codification, and severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, sir. There's two things I want to bring up here first off. The first point I want to bring up is that we've looked at and reviewed these numbers, and there is zero net effect to anybody except the city manager in this particular instance. So there's no no dollars being moved around. I want to put that out there because it's your dollars and my dollars that we're using, okay? The second thing I want to mention is that after going over the last couple of weeks and reviewing kind of the vesting time period that you see in most municipalities, I came to the conclusion that a 10-year vesting period is a disincentive, really, to come work for the city of Lynn Haven. 10 years is a long time. So I want the employees to know that we're also looking at prorating or tiering their vesting period. We're also looking at lowering your vesting period as well from 10 years to another time frame to make it more fair for you as well. So I wanted to put that out there and let everybody know that that's taking place. And then the final thing I'll say is I think Ms. Vicky is an outstanding city manager, and I think she is absolutely worthy of this vote in her favor because she does a lot of work. She does a lot of hard work. And in the contract negotiations, she gave and I gave a little bit, as you do in most dealings. But because of that, I honor her for that. And I think that this is something that we should certainly pass as a board and as a welcoming sign that we believe that you can do this job. So I'll leave it there.
If I can just clarify something and let you clarify as well in what you just said, Commissioner Aldridge, because Commissioner Aldridge was selected by the board to do the negotiation with Mrs. Gaynor. You just said that we had been looking at changing the retirement vesting period for everyone, and that was the first that I've heard of it. So we need to clarify to the public that I know I've had no conversation with you or any other commissioners about that, and so I don't think any of the others have heard about it either, unless
absolutely, Mayor.
Okay,
I
thank
understand
you,
what you're saying there. Yes,
okay,
when I say we, I do not reference the board. I'm referencing our human resources department and our city manager.
Okay.
So we've started looking into some numbers is really what we've started doing and seeing what our outcome would be. But again, I don't see it being necessarily an issue. So this is the first time some of the board members have heard about this. So I've just been diligently working on it, and we're not doing anything with it yet, but I just wanted the employees to know that we are looking at it.
Thank you. I just
yes,
wanted to
ma'am.
clarify.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And can I make the motion on it? But since I brought it.
So I would ask, is there a motion for approval? Well, first we need to read the second reading, which is number 1089. Do you mind reading?
I just previously.
You just read it. Thank you very much. I didn't realize we'd read it. So we've read it, and we need a motion for approval and a second, if it's to be approved.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the vesting period change to 5 years for Ms. Vicky Gaynor.
I'll second that motion.
So there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions from the commission?
I did have a question for Commissioner Aldridge. You said last meeting that you had some changes.
I thought,
what
yes.
are the changes that you've actually made here?
Well, I didn't make any changes. No, we were looking into some options, actually. It probably was poor verbiage I used, but we were looking at the Florida retirement system because a lot of the municipalities are in the Florida retirement system, and you have a little bit more flexibility into that system, but we just can't seem to make the numbers work correctly to go over to the Florida retirement, so unfortunately.
Thank you.
Are there other questions or concerns from the commission?
I have a question. One more
Go ahead.
question. No problem. And this ordinance right here is strictly for the current city manager, not every manager from
That's correct.
on now.
That's correct. Yes,
Correct.
Okay.
And just, Mayor, I don't mean
Go
to
ahead,
cut-
please.
kind of jump, but just to be clear, this ordinance number 1089 is the same exact ordinance that was went through the first reading approximately 3 meetings ago. There's no changes from that meeting when it was given the first reading.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Is there any other discussion from the commission? Is there any from the public? Yes, go ahead.
Brad Yunt, 210 Lakeview Terrace. I want to say that the willingness of the city manager to go in the same retirement system as the city employees, I see that as being a very democratic move on her part. I'm totally in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
No.
Commissioner Parnell,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. So it stands approved, and we'll move on to item number 12. The first reading of ordinance number 1090 An amendment to Article 50-171 allowing for the normal retirement age of a certain city manager to be the attainment of age 55 with 5 years of service. There's no action necessary on this item. It is a first reading only. Is that you? Or
I'll read it, that's fine.
thank you.
Ordinance number 1090, an ordinance of the City Commission of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending Article 5, Section 50-171, providing for retirement of a certain city manager hired on January 14, 2020, upon the attainment of age 55 and 5 years of service, providing for repeal or codification of severability, and providing for an effective date. Mayor, if I may just give a
Sure,
brief
please go
description.
ahead.
In speaking with the attorney for the pension board, he recommended, well, what this is if Ms. Gaynor's vesting period is going to be 5 years, it was all anticipated that her term of service would be 5 years, so they would have to match up. Right now, it's 10 years for each. Since we just passed 1089, she would vest in 5 years, but would have to have 10 years of service, which would not be the intent. So when the actuary was performing in its analysis and speaking with the pension board attorney, which he also, when he submitted a letter to the commission, he referenced this in his letter, suggested that we, if this is what we're going to do, then we need to make another change so that they match, so that it would be 5 years for vesting and 5 years of service, and that is what the actuary has been presuming. All the numbers have been based off of that, so that is why 1090 is before you right now.
And would this be 5 years of service with the city or as the city manager, since she has had?
With the city, total.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the board? There's no action necessary tonight, but the next time this is read, there will be action required. So if you have questions about this or concerns, this will be the time to bring that up. And there are none. Are there any questions from the public? Yes, Mr. Walker.
Like the previous discussion, this will not transcend to all the employees. This is just the city manager.
Just city manager.
So you're not going to do that. If I may ask, does the city manager have prior service with the city?
That's what I was just asking him,
Yeah.
and she does.
How many years does she have?
Yeah.
3, almost 3.
So she would be vested in 2.
Yes, sir.
And
She would be vested with a total of 5 years service. Put that way.
thank you.
Any other questions? So no actions required, so we'll move on then to item number 14. This is a public hearing, and I will need to,
13.
oh, did I skip one? I'm sorry. Just crossed the one. It was at the bottom. I apologize. I had 2 first readings here. I apologize. First reading of ordinance number 1093 regarding food trucks in the city of Lynn Haven. I'd ask the city attorney, do you have, or city manager, do you have it in front of you? City manager, thank you very much. If you would read ordinance number 1093.
An ordinance of the City Commission of Lynn Haven, Florida, creating a new chapter entitled Mobile Food Trucks Operating Within the City, providing definitions and regulations for mobile food trucks, requiring mobile food truck vendor permits, establishing regulations and prohibitions, providing for enforcement, appeals, and penalties, providing for repealer, codification, severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. So this is a first reading tonight. There's no action necessary, but again, I would extend the same invitation to the commission. Are there any comments or concerns that any member of the commission has regarding the ordinance as it is written?
Yes, Mayor.
Go ahead, please, Commissioner Aldridge.
You know, I'd have to say that I'm almost completely opposed to the plan that we have in place right now. I think it is way too restrictive. And it puts an undue burden on people that are coming in to try to just sell, you know, their goods and make a living like everybody else does. You know, I when I went and I looked at Bay County's food truck ordinance and I looked at Panama City's food truck ordinance, I did not look at the beaches. But when I looked at the other 2, their ordinance is about 3 to 5 pages in length, and there's a permit fee involved in it. And it's basically there to make sure that the owners of the food truck are following the food safety laws that are on the books. That's really it. And I've said it 100 times, and I'll continue to say it to the day I take my last breath. I am free market capitalist to the core, and I'm not for restrictions. I'm not for overcharging these people, because the government is not, it is not here to make and generate revenue for profit's sake. It is here to ensure the safety of the public. And so I believe that can be done with very minimal regulation. We're not reinventing the wheel here. It's been invented. Other towns have had these ordinances in place for a long time. And I think we just need to quit blowing this issue out of proportion and move forward with something that's straightforward and simple and is easy for the people to do business in the city of Lynn Haven.
Thank you, Commissioner Aldridge. What I would ask is, as we're discussing this,
Yes, ma'am.
because the attorney has spent time composing an ordinance
Sure,
for food trucks, and I also, I agree with a lot of what you said, and I would say, I've been pushing for food trucks since the storm because there's no place to eat.
That's right.
In Lynn Haven, and so if we're going to discuss the ordinance rather than just saying, I don't agree with it, or we need some specifics. What do you want taken out? Because we've been talking about this for several weeks. What do you not like? What do you like? So that the attorney has direction. And, if you want to say something as blanket as, I like Panama Cities, or I like Panama City beaches, or, whatever, but we can't talk any place besides right here.
Sure.
So we need some direction for the attorney to go forward.
Okay.
So
Yes,
as
ma'am.
you say, what you want, do you have some specific suggestions?
Yes,
is what I would
ma'am,
ask
I do.
you for.
Actually, a couple of the basics that I want is, I would say, a $50 or $100 permit fee. I'd like to see reciprocity between Lynn Haven, Panama City Beach, and Lynn Haven, if we can make that happen. I understand that, and I'm sure I'm going to get this feedback from others, that then the city's not generating the money that they would if they made everybody get a permit. And again, it brings me back to my argument. The government is not in the job of generating money. We are not a business. We do not profit. We're here to ensure safety of the public. So I think with that, with that understanding, a simple permit fee, reciprocity, and making sure that they're following all the laws and the guidelines of food safety should be enough. 3 pages should be enough.
Reciprocity, I'm confused how that would work. If all the food trucks have permits from other cities, would that mean, if it was reciprocal, then they would need no permit here, or that's how I understood it. Okay,
Yes,
just
ma'am. They'd
curious.
fall under the counties.
Mayor, may I interject something real quick?
Go ahead.
Panama City Beach is never going to agree to that. I mean, the Panama City Beach, which the media has put out there, that do not allow food trucks. This is incorrect. They do allow food trucks on a 7-day cycle and a 30-day period, and their fee is $50 plus 1% of your gross receipts. Think about that. 1% of your gross receipts are what you're supposed to pay. Whether you pay it or not, that's another thing, but that's what they require. Start doing the numbers, and our application fees don't sound crazy. I'm not saying that $1,650 is where we need to be.
And these are proposed application fees.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But no, Panama City Beach charges 1%. So, in fact, I talked to a food truck owner today that told me that in a 12-week period, her fee was about $400. Well, that works out to $1,200 a year for Panama City Beach. So, when you look at those numbers, I mean, unless you start comparing, everybody thinks that we're being crazy. Panama City charges $50. But Panama City Beach, it depends on how well you do. You're going to pay 1% of your gross receipts. So, obviously we don't have a license fee here, so we can't go that route. So we have to find an amenable application fee or a license fee, that works. I've contended all along that I keep saying fair playing field. I want food trucks. I want y'all in here because I like eating at them. I don't necessarily like the restrictions on color and size. I think that's overreaching. Maybe even overreaching as far as location's concerned. But there has to be a fair fee that you pay so that you compete against the brick and mortar stores that are here working, that are here paying property taxes. That's my whole contention, is I want y'all to pay a fair fee. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else on the commission?
Yeah, Mayor,
Yes,
if I could
ma'am.
speak to that, is it
Go ahead.
fair when it rains?
And you're directing that question
To
to?
Commissioner Russell.
Okay.
I mean, if we're talking about fairness, because food trucks can't sell in the rain, brick and mortar can. And I'm just bringing that up, not I bring it up as a point that we
Sure.
can talk about fairness all day. I mean, fairness to me, again, that's an argument that we can go round and round and round.
And so, if I could intervene just a little bit and say, for this to move forward, I look back to the days right after the storm and conversations that I had with staff, and we were looking to bring as many food trucks as possible into Lynn Haven so that people had a place to eat. And then we talked about, well, we'll start having events, maybe food truck Fridays, or we actually had that term first, and now we've let it run away to somewhere else. But we had some really good ideas, and I think initially what we were looking for was that we would have permits just to make sure that we knew who was operating in the city and to make sure that they were going according to whatever Florida food and health regulations were, and that we wouldn't have people setting up permanently, because if you look all over the county, there are some pretty unattractive food trucks that are just sitting in people's parking lots, and they're there all the time, and we didn't want that for Lynn Haven.
Right.
But so I think simplicity is what we initially started out with, and so to move forward with this is just a first reading, but our attorney we have to have someone to help us to draw up whatever our ordinance is, simple, complicated, expensive, cheap, whatever it is. It has to be drawn up to respect what the people of Lynn Haven are wanting, what the commission is hearing the people of Lynn Haven say, and also to bring in as much business as we can bring in so that we have variety and a good variety of food trucks in Lynn Haven that are safe and fun to go to and accessible. So for this to move forward, as commissioners, you need to give direction. You need to tell the attorney things like, item number 2 on this ordinance I don't like, or item number 1, or he needs direction from you. And am I correct in that?
Yes, Mayor, and not just here today, but personal phone calls or emails.
Sure.
Those are always welcomed by me. But this is my 3rd or 4th draft, and I know you want to speak, so I'll be real brief.
Well, that's
Commissioner.
okay.
It's my 3rd or 4th draft, and each draft gets more strict based off what I'm being told. So if I can, if it's let them pay a nominal fee and come in and just track them and make sure they're complying with the rules, then I can do that. If that's the general concept, I can put something pretty close to what the commission and the public would want. If it's no, we want more constraints on them, then I've tried to do that to the best of my ability. It may not be perfect, but I've tried to do what the commission's asked. So if you give me a concept of which direction to go, I can probably come pretty close.
And my comments were not a criticism at all of what you've done so far, but I think he's kind of given direction here, and then I'm going to give Commissioner Tender. Didn't see you asking
That's
to
okay.
speak. I'm sorry, but as we're speaking here, and then in the next 2 weeks, based on what we're saying, I'm going to also give opportunity to the public, and I know we have some business owners here, and maybe we can listen to what they're saying, and you can convey what you agree with, and then we can, at the next meeting, the second reading, we'll have a lot of different ideas that we can put forward and see what we can hammer out. Okay, Commissioner Tender?
Thank you, Mayor. On page 8, the top paragraph, I would like food trucks to be able to go to business locations. If the owner of the property wants to have them for a special event or anything like that, I think that should be permissible. So I'd like to see business locations dropped off that line. That's just me. Construction sites. Look right now how many, and I'm not talking about somebody building someone's home over on Minnesota Avenue. I'm talking about apartment building complexes and things like that, where they have 50 or 100 people out there working all day. It would be great for a food truck to be able to go there and feed those folks lunch, so they don't have to leave the premises and all that. So I would like to see construction, and even if we want to say large construction sites, I don't want to get down to 35 people or more or anything like that, but larger construction sites so that they could, eat there. I think we should go to, this is just my personal opinion, $50. And we already have the hours established right now, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. So they have to leave at night and come back. The owner of the food truck will decide whether it's worth them to go back to the same location or not. So I'd like us to keep that in mind. On page 7, under number 2, the very last line says, and if alcohol will be sold at the event. We can't sell alcohol at events. We did not pass that last year, did we? Okay, thank you very much.
It's prohibited under A2.
Okay, all right. And if alcohol should be sold at an event.
That's a consideration for the city. If later on we change the rules, then they can be
Okay.
considered. But it's
Oh.
prohibited if you look at the line there.
Okay. And then,
He left it
don't-
open for the future, in other words.
yes, right. I don't think we should restrict in size. I mean, they have to drive it. They can drive it, they can park it, and feed people out of it. That's how I feel about it. Damages, now I get real ticky when we have such wording as the food truck vendor they're liable for all damages and repairs to streets, sidewalks, trees. I get it if they're running over bushes and tearing them up. But I always get nervous when I see absolutes like this, because what if, there are accidents and stuff, and if they've tore up their truck, hopefully.
Commissioner Tender, in situations like that, what I've seen 99.9% of the time when there's a dispute, which is what we're assuming, is that one party says you damaged something, the other party says no. We have to come to either a mediated resolution, or B, we have to determine whether to file suit. So whether, if they're going to claim no, then the city would have to have proof that they damaged it. But it would be, I think it's certainly reasonable that if they damage something belonging to the city, they've got to pay for it. Now the question is, if they say no, then we'll have to evaluate what the facts are.
And that may be a really moot point because of the fact that right now everything is so severely damaged anyway. We're not really living in the garden area of the state, so we might can
wouldn't know
hold
if they
off on
really
that one
damaged
for a
it.
while.
Okay. I was just making notes as I went through it. This page concerned me. It's where all the measurements, and I'm just paraphrasing here. We've got 15 feet from stop sign, 15 feet from a fire hydrant and a driveway, and all this type of thing. When we have special events, like the block party, for example, if this was followed to the T right here, the block party wouldn't exist, because shh, I'm just saying.
I'm just kidding you.
I mean, obviously, I want the block party too, but so I don't know if that can be worded in a way.
Certainly, but I think the block party, you have roads that are shut down, correct?
Yes.
Okay. This is anticipation. We're trying to keep law enforcement and fire from being able to have entrance and exits. When you have the block party, law enforcement and fire understand this, and they've created alternative methods to reach a destination.
Thank you. You're absolutely
and
right.
I can clarify that if that would make everybody happier.
Anything else, Commissioner Tender?
Oh, inspections by the fire department. I think they're important, but I don't think those should be. Is John back there?
He's right there.
I don't think we should charge $125 every time an inspection takes place. I'd like to know that he's out there making sure that it's not gonna. It's a food truck. It's not sitting next to my house or anything close by. So if they have a short or something like that.
That was specifically requested by Chief.
Oh, it
So
was?
that
Sure.
The 125 was a one-time fee.
Oh.
We would inspect at any special event to ensure safety of the event goers and the workers of the food trucks. It's a one-time thing per year.
Okay.
How much time does it take to do that inspection?
We've never done it before. I'm assuming probably an hour.
Every truck or for?
Please order, okay. Thank you. We'll give you a chance to do that.
I'm assuming an hour with all the paperwork. We create a checklist, make sure we're following all the codes, and then the documentation after the inspection, travel time to and from.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. The only other thing that I wanted to address was the inspection. If we have one inspector, I don't know why we would need code enforcement and some of these others going out there as well. If he's going to do the whole inspection, I don't think we need to over-police the whole situation.
Well,
U.S. or Department of Agriculture will show up at these places, and they make sure these folks are in compliance when it comes to that type of thing. But
The entire ordinance, Commissioner Tender, I put together was based off my understanding of what the commission wanted. I'm not,
yeah.
Somehow everybody's looking at me like I'm trying to
I
prevent
don't-
them.
no, I don't think
I
so.
don't have a vote, and I just try to do the best I can with the thoughts.
I was just offering my
but-
suggestions since
but,
you asked for
I mean,
them.
I think,
Well,
I
and
think
staff
Chief
has-
Ramey can speak to this. When it comes to over policing, it comes down to how much he wants to enforce it and what he thinks is appropriate. I do think that the city needs to be able to send code enforcement out there if there's a specific problem, but that doesn't mean code enforcement has to be out there beating down their door every day. But if the commission wants this eliminated, I will eliminate any and all word that you request.
Well, for the record, I agree with Commissioner Aldridge. I think everything is just blown way out of proportion. It's a food truck. And I believe in free enterprise too, and I think everybody should be able to have a shot at it.
I think my first rendition would kind of closely meet what you're asking for, Commissioner Tender, and what Commissioner Aldridge, which was a $100 fee. And there's a few little things I can take out based off this, but basically it was a $100 fee, comply with all the rules as far as sanitation, don't dispense your grease into the city system, and you'd be subject to review from the city.
And is
was
that a
basically it.
year, not a per
That's
event?
a year. That's a year.
Thank you.
Roughly from memory.
Thank you, Mayor.
And from what the city attorney has said tonight, I think there's been a lot of input to him, not only from the commission, but I think a lot of staff. I didn't realize we had the fire inspection until this new, so I really liked simple.
Yep.
Just say that. So any other comment from the commission?
Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead, Commissioner Perno.
I would just like to say that that we've had 3 or 4 goes at this, and every time Adam's added more and more, and I think it got to a point where it got noticed, and I'm glad people from the food truck community are here, but by no means was this a final set in stone document.
It's a first reading.
Yeah, but I know they're here to voice their concerns. But ultimately, I'm of the same mindset as Commissioner Tender and Commissioner Aldridge. We need to take it back to its simplest form. And as much as social media has said, I do want food trucks also in Lynn Haven. I think that we're gonna get to a point where I want to hear from the people who operate the food trucks. I think Ms. Gaynor is already set to meet some of them, and I had met with or spoke with our city attorney about private employers getting these food trucks on their turf and making an incentive for their employees where the food truck operator can also sell to the public. So, and that goes against what's written in here, but I think we can reword that. Mr. Attorney and I have already spoke about that, and then I think we need to visit the permitting fees and what they should be, and if we could include it in the permitting fee with the inspection, that would be great. So
Thank you.
And everybody would be hopefully on a great playing field moving forward, and it'd be it's an amenity for our citizens. We want to move forward. I really want food trucks to have a presence. I want to have a food truck night. But I kind of don't want it to look like 23rd Street, where there's a food truck in the corner of a convenience store and it sits there 24 hours a day, or 15th Street. So that's kind of where we're going. We want to keep Lynn Haven in a respect where it's going to be. These are going to be great events, and they're going to be great venues for people to go to. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate Mike and you guys that are out there. My glasses are all messed up. I can't see far away. But I appreciate y'all being here, man. Thank you. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Perno. So if there's nothing else from the commission, I'm sorry, Commissioner Russell?
Yes, ma'am, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I just want to make a couple of comments. The first being, when this first came about, my initial, first of all, I wanted to tell you that there's been some comments on Facebook and posts on Facebook disparaging two of the commissioners that own restaurants. I want you to know I was the one that pushed forward with the fees. So, and I don't own a restaurant, so I don't have a dog in that fight. So instead of blaming commissioners that own restaurants and thinking that they were trying to eliminate competition, I was the one that was pushing for a fair and equitable fee. So, you know, call me if you have a problem. That being said, I still contend that there needs to be a fair and equitable fee. But of course, I'm only one of 5 commissioners on this board. So, you know, if the other commissioners decide that $50 is what they want to charge, then that's where we move forward. But I never was for restricting your size or your colors or any of that stuff. So, but other than that, thank you very much. Let me speak, Commissioner or Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else from the commission? And I would just conclude, and then I'll ask it for public commentary at this point. I do want to reiterate, I was ripped up pretty good on social media myself, but I am actually the person who suggested having the food trucks in Lynn Haven. And so that was, you know, pretty hurtful. Sometimes you just don't want to read what people have to say. So I would like to see this done in a very fair way, and I'd like to see everybody do really well, because I see the food trucks, you know, you're making money, but I also see you bringing a great service to the people of Lynn Haven.
Sure.
So it's going to be a lot of fun for everyone. I think it's going to be a great time. And so with that said, I'd like to open the floor to anyone who wanted to speak about this. And you don't have to be a food truck owner to speak.
The whole idea of the ordinance is that we want food trucks. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we do. And go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Mike Leverkovic, 14717 Little Blue Lane, Southport, Florida. I'm the guy that I guess that started all this.
Well, welcome.
When I spoke with Ms. Gaynor the other night, it blew me away of the comments that were being made. And when I posted it, I was very selective with the language that I used. You go back and look at it. And I wanted to put this out there for the citizens to look at. When I first saw it, I wasn't going to show up here because I don't really do a whole lot of business in Lynn Haven. I'm that guy that drives around and hits east, west, north, south. I'm up in Chipley, I'm in Bluntstown, I'm in Marietta, and they come out of the woods. And we sell a lot of prime rib, and I have to sell a lot of prime rib to be able to make money. Some of you come to the rig, you see what my prices are, and some of you own restaurants and you see what my prices are, and you know I'm extremely competitive. But my 17-year-old daughter reminded me that I have a lot of customers that work and live in Lynn Haven. They don't know what regulations and ordinances are in other municipalities. And I have an obligation to these folks that show up with the prime rib guy hat on and T-shirts and so forth, folks that come to the rig, and they do, they're extremely passionate, they're extremely loyal followers that I have. Some of the stuff that was said, that's negative stuff. I'm a positive guy. And what I just got done listening to from everybody sitting at this table is stuff that concerns us as food truck owners, the fees, the requirements on the length and the width and so forth like that. If you're looking for some input, somebody's done a little bit of homework, I've got some items that I would like to have addressed as well, but we could make that meeting very short. $50 fee. One of the things that you're going to want to put on your application is a state certification number. We are all called mobile food kitchen units, and that state, our state, issues us a license number, and so you're going to want that from the people. If you want insurance from the people, as far as locations go and where we can go and so forth, people have to use common sense of what they're doing. You don't need to be blocking traffic and making it where people can't get in and out of parking lots and that type of stuff. But it's a B2B type deal. The gentleman that opened up the CarQuest down on 77, he's been on the phone asking me to come, and finally I told him, I said, they now have an ordinance and I can't come, I'm sorry. But when I set up at a place like that, people come to see me and they come to see him and vice versa. And that gentleman that's running that parts store, he knows more about parts than any of us do. But he doesn't know a damn thing about food trucks. And putting the responsibility on him to sign an affidavit and that he's going to be responsible for me and what he knows and stuff like that, yeah, that's probably a little bit too far.
Sir, if you could wrap it up because you're at your time,
Okay.
just so we have time for everyone.
Pick up the phone and call me. My number's everywhere. And I'm extremely happy that this is starting off on a positive note. The way that I feel right now and the way I felt Saturday afternoon is night and day. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And we do have a clock set up if you'll try to stay within the 3 minutes, because I know there are a lot of people who have opinions they'd like to express. Thank you so much, sir. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good afternoon. I'm Lonnie Andrews from Vernon, Florida. I own Smoking Butts Barbecue, catering and concessions. I have about 6 units. I do a lot of business here in Lynn Haven, mostly on the special event side. We very rarely do lunches because I own a construction company, but if need be, we can. But I don't have no problem with the $50 fee or whatever, but I've traveled the country. I've never paid for a fire inspection. Never. Wherever you go, if you go to Fort Walton, fire marshal come around, check you. You got to have your K-series fire extinguisher for your grease and your regular fire extinguisher. It's a simple task. I mean, you're regulated by the state of Florida. They send inspectors out to check your rig. I got 4 food licenses. I mean, I don't have a problem paying fees. I pay fees all the time. But when they get streams, $125 is crazy to me. So for me, it'll be 125 times 5 because I got a lot of rigs. Sometimes people want me to bring 2, maybe 3 to fill the gap. But I just ask that you be mindful of us when you make your decisions. Is that all right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
for your
sir.
time.
Thank you for coming. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I really don't want to come to this meeting, but I'm very thankful for all the work that you guys do. I know that all you guys are trying to support the Food Truck Society. It's a hard business, but you guys, every time I see any of you guys around town, it's like, I cannot wait for you guys to come to Lynn Haven. We are coming thanks to you all. The regulations and the fees, you all know, bring them down. We're all willing to pay for them. The sales tax, increase, say 1% sales tax. We will charge our customers, and we in turn pay it to the city. That's how we do it at the beach. So, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Tracy.
Anyone else? Yes.
I'm glad it sounds like everybody's coming to a consensus, and I was concerned about the restrictions on locations, which means I'm with Roberts Hall. We do a lot of special events. We've become a premier live music venue on this side of the bridge, and food trucks are very important to our concerts. And people go down. The last concert we had, people were down at that food truck all during the time, and that whole corner is very busy. So if I'm, the other restriction that kind of bothers me is that we can only go to 8 o'clock at night because concerts start at 7, you know, and we finished up at 10. And people went down constantly to the food truck to get food. So that restriction would be kind of put a dampening
Limiting.
effect on our Roberts Hall concert series. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Liz Charrington. I'm the owner of Crepe and Cream. We are the vendor for the Robertstown concert series. The time, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Most places are open later, whereas a lot of the businesses are closed. We respect people's property. We are not going to park somewhere where it's open. In fact, our first night when we started doing the Robertstown, it was so packed that we had a hard time finding a spot. We were able to move some cars, but it was from the customers of Robertstown because they wanted us near them. And we were able to park in their spots, thank to them. So if you guys can please consider. Now, if the reasoning to stop at 8 o'clock is because of maybe the noise allotment, bring that up. And you know, it does smell or whatnot, because some trucks do have loud generators. I know I used to have one, but when we were getting constantly told, wow, that's really loud, we got the hint. We bought a bigger one and a quieter one. You barely hear it. We even made a sound buffer for it. So please, you know, take that into consideration. But the time, 8 o'clock, that's just too harsh, especially if you have places where they serve alcohol. We do a lot of night work. There's really no reason to do it, and you're causing us to lose money as well. We've just now started into the Lynn Haven, and we love it. We love the people. To me, Lynn Haven is a great spot to start going into. But when you start restricting sizes and whatnot, that gets hard too on us as well. So thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Mayor, could I say something real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
We had a company meeting, and Crepes and Cream were out there for Robert's Hall, and half of our people went outside to get crepes, and and they said they were extremely good. So hats off to you.
Sir, go ahead.
Hello, my name's Frank Rapisi. I'm new to the area. We came down in November. We have the Gelato Love food truck, which is a rolling ice cream shop. And I was asked to come to the meeting with some of the other food truck folks. And at first, when I read the ordinance, I was very concerned because I went through a similar situation in Birmingham, Alabama. It was a much more contentious type of communication between the two. But we found that over a period of time, just by listening to each other's needs, they coexist wonderfully. And as far as a benchmark for Panama City Beach, I think that's a pretty high benchmark, because in Jefferson County, Alabama, which was a 300,000 population, you had one permit, and it lasts for the whole year, and you were able to go on private property. You weren't restricted. You weren't individually charged for, you know, each individual event that you do. But I was just thrilled to hear the comments that came from the council, because it's not at all what was reflected in the initial ordinance that I looked at. And we appreciate you listening to our needs and understanding that we can coexist. I mean, we bring a lot of things to your community.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate those comments. And again, it is a first reading, and the purpose of public first readings is so that we can make alterations if we need to, or adjustments. So who else would like to speak? Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Sarah Gramlich. I own the food truck Ira Olympia. I live in the community. I live in one of the biggest communities, HOA communities here in Lynn Haven, the Hammocks. And when the ordinance said about being for in communities, apartment complexes, and things like that, I was actually scheduled to be in Arbor Trace the day after the hurricane. Of course, that didn't happen. But there is a need and a desire for those people in those communities to have something convenient for them. So even my community has put out a lot saying, we want food trucks here, we want more, we want to enjoy that. And right now, from what I actually could find online for the ordinances, there isn't actually anything saying that we're not allowed. It does for special events, of course. That's just reasonable. But what is in place right now? Is there or anything? Because that has been mixed on social media, mixed information. So what is the current information for food trucks other than this ordinance?
And in the past, food trucks have really been part of special events in Lynn Haven, and this is something that we really just sort of talked about it right after the storm, when all of us were in one building and just, you know, brainstorming about how we could bring this into our community. So there's not an ordinance on the books right now, and for danger of misspeaking, is when there's not an ordinance, sometimes people just park their trucks and do what they want to do.
Right, and
so
I understand. I don't want any of that. We don't want riffraff in the community,
but
because I love this area.
the ordinance is not in place as of yet.
Okay.
So it is misinformation that there is a Lynn Haven ordinance, because this is the first reading of the ordinance. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so what is there to go on, like, forward until an ordinance is made?
I'm going to defer to the attorney. I can give you my opinion, but my opinion is right now that if you probably were not doing something nefarious or causing a disturbance, that you're probably within the limits of the law. But I'll be quiet and let you take over, Mr. Attorney.
Very open-ended question, but I think if you're
I was right.
I think if you're if you're obviously operating a commercial business, so if you're operating a commercial business, I think you would fall under the LDRs, land development regulations that we have here in Lynn Haven, and as far as where you can operate. We don't allow commercial businesses in residential areas, residentially zoned areas, things like that. But there is not currently an ordinance in place, and what you're looking at is not in place and is not going. Does not sound. I don't have a vote again, but it does not sound like it's going to be in place.
Not today.
What you will see at the next meeting will be, from what I'm hearing from the individuals I work for up here, is that they want it scaled down. So I'm going to go back to one of my initial drafts, and I actually would like to reach out to some of you for some of the technical aspects. You know it more than I. But I think, from what I'm hearing from the individuals I work for and they work for you, is that we need it scaled down. I think that's what you'll see at the next meeting.
I think so. And I think that's very great. You guys have been doing a good job, and I think we're open communication, and we love that because that's what we are here for, is to have an open communication with you guys. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Anyone else? So what I'm hearing is that all the ideas that have been spoken tonight, both by the commission and the owners of food truck businesses and just some of the residents, that we're going to scale the ordinance down with some of the suggestions. If there's something in particular that you feel strongly about, you need to contact our city manager, and she can, or either our city attorney. It might be easier to go through our city staff, and we can convey that. And we hope at the next meeting that we'll have an ordinance that we can look at and possibly come to agreement on and come to a vote. Sound good? Anybody else? Go ahead.
If I may ask, I've got to ask a question. And you know me. Sometimes I can't keep my mouth shut. I was led to believe and under the impression that the city of Lynn Haven does not allow food trucks, and that for us to allow food trucks, we needed to have this ordinance. Am I being told now that the city of Lynn Haven allows food trucks and we're trying to restrict them?
I think what was being said, Commissioner Russell, is that the reason that we felt the need to have an ordinance as we move forward with having food trucks was to prevent some of the things that we've seen happening that are not good in some of the other areas. But we don't have an ordinance at this time, which is why we're trying to bring about an ordinance. There, as our attorney pointed out, that there are some restrictions about what can happen in a residential area, where you can park and conduct business, or do you have a business license. But we felt, and I when I say we, I'm talking about the city manager and myself, and we've had a lot of conversations through the storm, but we felt that there needed to be some sort of ordinance in place. The attorney felt there needed to be an ordinance in place if we were going to move forward, because we're talking about having large-scale events, food truck Fridays, and possibly just allowing food trucks on a regular basis. And having an ordinance doesn't necessarily mean you have to have an encyclopedia of rules, but we needed an ordinance, and we needed to start from somewhere. And I think that there was a misunderstanding by a lot of people who saw the ordinance online that it was already in place, and it's a first reading for discussion. So it still didn't answer what you're saying?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay, try again.
I'm not sure where I got this, but I was led to believe that the city of Lynn Haven did not allow food trucks. And I even said that to the prime rib guy in a message I passed to him, that the city of Lynn Haven does not allow food trucks. That's what I was told by this city.
By who? You don't want to say. Okay.
So, yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry. That's your job, Mayor. I'm sorry.
We're having a pretty open discussion. We'll try to stay with Robert's rules, though. Go ahead.
I can just say that historically, we seldom in the past had requests for food trucks, and when we did, when Mr. Lynch was the city manager, he would say that they basically weren't allowed except for events. So even though we didn't have an ordinance in place, that was the city manager's, and maybe he was reflecting the commission's thoughts or views on it, but we didn't have an official ordinance in place, and I think that's probably because we just weren't asked very
And that
often.
was like 3 city managers ago.
That
so
was
that's
a while
long
back,
ago.
and then that's
Okay.
just been, you know, up until recently when there's been more interest, that's always been, well, we have them at events or at the farmers market.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Then I want to apologize to the prime rib guy and the other people that I've said, that I have told that the city does not allow food trucks. Because I've been passing wrong information off that was given to me. So for that, I apologize.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, moving right along. And thank you all again for coming this evening. Public hearing. This is item number 14 now. And the time is, let me get my phone, 7:27. And this public hearing is now open. This is the discussion and possible approval of the transmittal of a large-scale future land use amendment application, ESR 20-1, by resolution number 2020-03-312, requesting a land use change from T&D to mixed use for specified parcels in the villages at Mills Bayou. We had a workshop earlier concerning this item, and I would say to you that there is a sign-up sheet, I believe, placed on the desk over here by our sound technician, that as we're discussing this and you want to have information sent to you from the state, is that correct? Yes. That if you sign up on this sign-up sheet, if you live in that area or if you don't live in that area and you'd like to know, then this information will be sent to you as it progresses. So there it is. Ms. Richard, if you'd like to make your comments here.
Yes. This is a public hearing to receive comments on the transmittal of a proposed future land use map amendment via the required expedited state review process, and to receive City Commission approval on the transmittal to the state agencies of the same. The proposed amendment is to amend the future land use map from traditional neighborhood development, TND, to mixed use, MU, on property located between Highway 390 and County Road 2321. There are 3 parcels involved, parcel numbers 11344-000-000, 08710-000-000, and 11344-000-000. The property is over 10 acres in size at approximately 668.18 acres, and so must go through the expedited state review process. Florida statutes requires that the draft ordinance and supporting materials be transmitted to various state agencies for their review and comments prior to the City Commission being authorized to adopt the amendment. The property owner, applicant, D&H Properties LLC and Mill Bayou Enterprises LLC. The agent or contact is James Slanina, PE, and I think he's here. He was here earlier. And the one thing that, I wanted to also tell you what the adjacent land uses are, because one of the things, the main things, the criteria that the state looks at is to see whether it is compatible with the surrounding land uses. To the north, there is a Bay County residential, which has duplex manufactured housing. To the south is single-family residential under Bay County residential. To the east is single-family residential under residential Bay County. And to the west is single-family residential with traditional neighborhood development. And as the current, the mixed use land use category that's being asked for has similar uses to the T&D, I can't say how the state would think upon it, but that would be something that they would also be looking at.
Okay, thank you. So we've already had the workshop with the commission. Does the commission have any further questions or comments for Ms. Richard regarding this item?
No, I'd rather talk to a resident.
Oh.
My question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there other questions from the commission or concerns? Are there any questions or concerns from the public regarding this item that you'd like to address the commission about?
Hi, I'm Lori Ubowski. I'm at 108 Shoreview Drive, and I live in Villages in Mill Bayou. There are several of us here. I'd just like us to stand really quick so you can see how many people here from our neighborhood concerned about this issue.
Thank you for coming.
We're parents, grandparents, medical personnel, professionals, educators, military members, and first responders who have all invested in not only our homes, but a lifestyle that we were told we would be experiencing. There are several reasons we have serious concern with entrusting further development to someone who has consistently shown lack of knowledge and experience in development, lack of follow-through, inability to see how his business decisions affect the betterment of the entire development, and empty promises while virtually operating with no accountability. He's going to continue to be a problem with current development and future developments. Me personally, moved into the neighborhood almost 5 years ago, one of the first families there. We were promised a lot that we decided to invest in because of those things, those amenities, and I have yet to see several of those things. Really just a quick list of the lack of follow-through would be the playground, which you have a drawing there that we were furnished. That was in an email to me July 2nd, 2015. We still have no playground, and I have firsthand account from John David that he has no intention of fulfilling this promise. We were promised a kayak launch, a walking path, a dog park, in which material was actually purchased, but was left there to rest, and so we still have no dog park, like no fencing, like it all rested. There's still a large portion of our neighborhood that has no street lights. So finished houses, more houses being built there, and still no street lights. Just some examples of his lack of development experience and poor business decisions. Failed to secure an HOA management company for billing and homeowner communication with a large community that was growing. We insisted, finally secured one. The landscaping, he didn't properly follow the statute to bid out large contracts and entrusted to a family member who neglected it, and then finally hired someone at our insistence, and they weren't paid for several months. Also using HOA funds to landscape areas that were not owned by our HOA. There's widespread drainage issues, eroding water retention ponds. There's so many things that are wrong. Even D.R. Horton, a major corporation, backed out of purchasing part of the current phase because the deal that he made with the bank made those lots unaffordable. And he was too difficult to work with because of all the extra expenses he couldn't cover himself. For example, the lights, the pool, finishing the pool, and the pool insurance. He wasn't able to pay those things, and so they foot the bill for quite a while. The sale of those lots that D.R. Horton backed out of has now been procured by Adams Homes, but there's still no playground. Like we were told, when D.R. Horton buys those lots, those last few lots, they pay for the playground. Then when Adams bought it, they pay for the playground. Well, we still have no playground. It's just dirt. Our pool was completed a year late, and it was only finished because D.R. Horton paid for it. Then it wasn't usable because it was not insurable due to being deeded improperly. So you can kind of see the trend of like things falling through the cracks, and I'm out of time. But
you have a prepared statement, and I will allow it. Go ahead.
Okay. So really just a consistent pattern of things falling through the cracks and just no follow through and just all the empty promises. And I didn't catch her name because I came in a little bit late for the workshop, but I appreciated what she said about, we were having discussion about Sweet Bay. And, if we were looking at the possibility of a Sweet Bay, I'd be like, great, like tell me, sell it to me. But there's no confidence in this developer to be able to come up with the vision and the follow through for a Sweet Bay. Therefore, there's no confidence in him. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this from the public?
My name is Holly Spring, and I also live in the Village of Sunil Bayou. Just so you know, we all met together, so we put a couple speeches together just to,
Okay.
so you could, so we wouldn't monopolize one person.
Thank you.
So we wanted to make it as easy as we could. As Lori said, we have very little confidence that John David can be trusted. We are very concerned about our property values back you and what mixed use would mean for the development in the community. As you see from the numbers in the workshop, it allows for a lot more commercial usage. It allows for a lot higher density on acres of units. So there is very differences between the T&D and the mixed use that we're concerned about, as well as the fact that we don't trust him. So we're proposing two things to commission just for ideas. Number one, hold him to the T&D that he was originally supposed to put there, develop the land the way you're supposed to do it, get bids in, step up, and make it happen. The other thing we would consider as homeowners and would have you consider, we are not unhappy with our neighborhood. Regardless of what you've heard and the promises, we really like each other. And it's a very aesthetically pleasing neighborhood. We cleaned the entire neighborhood ourselves after Hurricane Michael because we couldn't get him to do anything. He showed up a little bit. We cleaned the retention ponds. We re-put the fences. We bent over backwards with some assistance from him, limited, however. So we would not be disappointed if you continue the precedent that the prior commission set was him applying for exceptions to build back there. However, keeping control, not turning over 300 acres and letting him go to town, maybe giving him an exception for the first 100 acres or continue the development that was listed that he doesn't need to go back to the state for. We're just very concerned with the change between T&D and mixed use and what he could come and apply to you for. Because that opens up the door for him to be on your doorstep, as well as us to have to come back here on a regular basis and say, I don't want the Dollar General across from our entrance. No, that really doesn't work for us. I know it has to be aesthetically pleasing, but now you're giving him the right to ask. So we completely understand, and we're not unhappy with the exceptions that were made. We all had our battles with D.R. Horton, yes. We all had our stuff, or most of our battles had been with him and his lack of follow-through and the things that he promised. And it is continuing. We'll work through our HOA, and we will continue to try and work with him. We know that you guys have no responsibility to that at all. But we want you guys to be aware of who you are dealing with and all the things that he has done. And it doesn't exactly all jive together very well. So we like to take that into account and give us the ideas back that we're willing to work with it. I just think that mixed use is a really big jump to go to and reward somebody who hasn't met the promises to the homeowners in the 140 homes that are currently back there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak to this? Yes, Mr. Walker. I think I had Mr. Walker now.
Yeah, thank you. Again, it's back to the old days of what they were told. It's what we were told also. One of the things is this changes the TND. Does that throw out the TND forever? Because it's not the same anymore. We were told at the Planning Commission that the TND didn't have that many changes versus the MU. Didn't have them. There are changes, and it's strictly what they're saying. It's elaborating on it, making it more dense, commercial, et cetera, et cetera. The TND, as I said before, was set up purposely after a long, long trial, and it would have worked. I think they're correct in saying, let them make it work. Tell them, make it work. And it will work. And it will not look like Sweet Bay. It's designed to be like that that little movie that they had with that actor in it. That's the town that we signed on to 15 years ago. And none of that has come true.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Susan Long, and I am a resident of the Villages of Mill Bayou. I bought 2 years ago, right before the hurricane, and my house did beautifully through the hurricane. It had limited damage. I was able to fix myself, so we are happy with the houses. I do want to speak to you tonight, however, about the biggest problem that John David has created, and it's not your fault, this commission's fault, but the decision to place a school with a major road passing through the campus was a superb blunder. And I want to explain why. Margot, I might go more than 3 minutes, but I'll try to talk as fast as I can. Okay. First off, the school itself creates a huge traffic problem. It is not one school. It is 3 schools. 3 schools. It has the largest student body of any other school campus in Bay County. It's got 2,000 students enrolled. So every day, oops, I think I just, there we
You're
go.
fine.
Okay. So every day, all of those parents are bringing their kids in. Now, it's a countywide school, so there's a lot more parental drop-off. There are 734 high schoolers, so there's about 450 kids that can drive cars day in and day out. Add to that, over 100 teachers plus staff members. That's an awful lot of traffic. The second part of the problem is the way that it's laid out, the traffic pattern that they set up. All of the entering K-12 parents go in the same entrance. They all leave the same entrance. The student crosswalk that goes over to the student parking is at the same intersection. The exit for student parking is at the same intersection. When you come up on the right-hand side and you're going to be through traffic, you cannot see kids in the crosswalk. because there's 2 lanes stopping to turn left, and there's only 1 designated turn lane. Okay? I've had to slam on my brakes multiple times, and so have the rest of the residents. They're all probably nodding behind me because they know what I'm talking about. We had an adult female hit by a car last year, I believe, because she bent down to pick something up in the crosswalk that she had dropped, and she was out of view of the oncoming traffic. So this is a serious problem. I know you might be able to help me. I don't know any other schools in Bay County that have a major road running through them. We just had an accident at Bay High yesterday because the student was on Harrison. Now that's a big road, but it doesn't actually access through the campus. All right, so that's the first 2 parts of the problem.
And Mrs. Long,
Yes.
I will, if you can kind of wrap it up as quickly as you can, and we'll see where you're going, but maybe make a few quick more points because you've
Okay.
reached the end. Because
I would. Okay, I'll try to make it as quick as I can.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have right now we have 100 homes in our residential area, which is about 200 cars. Okay, so we don't add a whole lot to that traffic pattern, although it still adds to it. Right now, the TND allows for 2,000 more homes to be built. You can average 2 cars per house. That's 4,000 cars. That's what you're allowing currently. If you go to mixed use, you're going to double the density that's allowed. Do the math. That's about 7,800, 7,400 cars going through a school zone. It's a big mistake. And all I can say is that the land developer, once again, in order to entice people to move in there, put the school there. It was a bad decision. Okay.
Thank you. I think you
you.
made that point very well. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Yes.
Hello, my name is Lucy Mueller. I'm a military wife, and I am a resident of Villages of Male Bayou. I just have a very few quick points.
Okay.
It's a great community. We love it. We moved there in 2018, a year before the hurricane. And after the hurricane, the community came together very nicely, and we all cleaned up. Like, we were like pulled piles of rubbish, put it on the road. So when the city trucks came through, and they were able to clean it up. So we're all friends. I love it there. My kids attend the Norwegian Chair Academy, and I love that we can walk to school. I have experienced that growing up in Europe, and it's great. The traffic is an issue at the pickup and drop off. You might want to actually, I would like to suggest, kind of park your car and kind of see, how it looks maybe. It is intense. Our street lights are, like it was mentioned, are not there all the way. And then I like to take my kids on a walk, like to post office sometimes. And if they didn't have that light up scooter, and if we go around, I can't see them. The unpaved roads and drainage issues throughout in the common areas, like what we call the playground, where the playground isn't, but after the rain we like sink into that area. Now, we would say develop homes that are similar to our neighborhood and keep the aesthetic and pleasing effect. And people would like to buy those kind of houses. A lot of military folks are coming back to Tyndall, and you want them to live here, I believe. We are here for a limited time, so some people who are bought a forever home are not as concerned about the resale value of our homes as we are. And
Then if you can start bringing it to a close.
no,
Okay,
this is my
you're-
last point.
Okay,
And
thank you.
We were
Thank you.
promised that we were gonna basically the prices of the house is built around us were gonna be similar, but that already hasn't happened. We've bought 300K plus houses, and then around in the same subdivision, when you look at the comps, there are already 200K houses. So I just wanted to bring that point up. Well, thank you for hearing us, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Yes, ma'am. We just have a little clock set up, and it's not set in stone, but if you just try to stay with it so that everybody has a chance, okay? Go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and ladies and gentlemen. I moved to Lynn Haven a few months ago because of military. We moved here in October. And the Mill Bayou is a great community. We really like the city of Lynn Haven. That's why we chose to live here. We bought in Mill Bayou because we want it to be our forever home, and I'm doing everything in my power to make it our forever home if I can help it. I once I moved in, I spoke to a lot of the residents, and I found a major discontent with Mr. David, the developer. Promises not kept with a lack of follow-through. With a rezoning proposal, it showed the residents that Mr. David's lack of care, respect for the community by not speaking with the residents on the intent and plans prior to bringing this to the commission. It left a lot of residents concerned, including myself. As a resident, we deserve to know what the plans are for the land and only add anything to the area that will add value to our homes in the community. I don't believe Mr. David has the community's or even the city's best interests at heart here. His lack of follow-through shows that based upon what you've already heard. And growing up in the Southern community, actions speak louder than words, and as you can see, that is evident with this. Based upon the facts I've heard thus far and Mr. David's actions or lack thereof, I don't agree with this rezoning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
Good evening. Jim Slonina, Panhandle Engineering. Not representing John David, but representing the applicant. I'm not here for John David's performance, lack of performance. That if I lived in that community, I'd probably be standing there and have the same piece of paper in front of me. I'm also not the engineer of record for the school or Shoreline Village. I think I'm pretty well covered on that. What I am the engineer for is the backbone water from 390 to Deer Point Elementary, water, sewer, and reuse, several $1 million project we did, and I'm the engineer of record for Deer Point Elementary. So far, I hadn't heard no bad stuff about it. Again, I hear what these people are saying, and I guess a majority of it is developer non-performance, dissatisfaction, not living up to promises as I hear them. I don't know all this, but I believe in it. But I'm here is because the TND designation, which was established solely for this property and at the request of D&H Properties, has been a failure. It's been a failure because you issued a development order for a school to go where no school should have been gone before. Wasn't even allowed in the stipulated agreement. And then we turn around and issue all these special exemptions. You know what special exemption is? It means you've authorized all these times no one had to follow the TND. And that's what these people are living in, non-TND dwellings. So, and I've been in the city for a long, long time, and I've worked with Amanda and other planners, and the TND, it's discouraging. It's, the project never took off like a seaside, and only portions of Sweet Bay are TND, not all of it. It didn't. So, sold a big chunk of land for a conservation park, and the city's gonna operate. Built 2 schools, or had 2 schools developed on the property, which is a positive thing. Not necessarily that it's split up like it is there. But a lot of good things, opportunities still present itself. 30% of the property has been developed. It was 950 acres, now it's 668 undeveloped. All that being said, I'd like to move on to what I think a crux is. I've heard several folks come up here and make statements that are patently not true. Not that they're lying, they just don't understand or don't know. I just like to give you 3 or 4 bullets. TND, 20 units an acre. Mixed use only allows 20 in particular cases with commercial, otherwise it's 10 per acre. TND allows 100-foot building height. Mixed use allows 50. Lot coverage, a cause of related to stormwater drainage issues and all. You can cover up 90% of your property in a TND, 75% in mixed use. Those are the practical numbers I deal with all the time when we develop projects for clients. Those are the types of things that tell me when something is intense or not as intense. Because this is a failure, and because the commission has recognized and this failure and given it special exemptions over and over and over, it's been a lament for the city planner, me, and other engineers that are trying to work or to try to develop something out there. So we looked at it. Mixed use is a lesser intensity. One of the
So, Mr. Salina, at this point, if you can wrap it, if you're
Well,
speaking
I
as
got-
a member
I
of the
got 3
public
minutes
or
for every one of those, don't I?
No. So if you can bring it to.
But I think it's pertinent information.
I
since
do
a lot
too.
Since I've heard 30 minutes of the other side, and I got just a couple more. I talked about some
I'll
of the
let you call
design
out.
parameters, lot coverage, 100-foot versus 50-foot, 20 versus 10, and I heard someone say they're going to have so many more units. The application is for the same number of units that was in TND. Now you can build 20 an acre instead of 10 an acre, but the total number of units being proposed by the application is the same as the TND, no greater. Also, mixed use doesn't allow bars and nightclubs. Guess what does? TND. Group homes, TND, not mixed use. And there's several other issues. Mixed use in Lynn Haven allows commercial and residential, but only the types of commercial that's compatible with residential. That's what commercial is for commercial, hard commercial, which is allowed in TND, but mixed use is that middle of the road softer. So speaking for someone that fully respects these people's issues, and I do, I think that it'll be a less dense, less skyscraper potential, and those are entitlements that the developer already has as a TND. They're not subjective, they're already entitled. And I'll leave you, and I appreciate consideration to transmit it to the state and see if they feel it's also a lesser intensity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Yes, sir.
Once again, thank you for recognizing me. My name is John Dose. I'm at 105 South Shoreview Drive, live in Mill Bayou. I really appreciate my residents bringing up their points. I'm just speaking on behalf of myself, so I just have a couple of questions. You know, when this is being submitted or possibly, being approved today for transmission to state, will the Department of Transportation or you, would you all consider the traffic flow with all the development with other residential areas at Cato and 390, as well as the preserve that's being considered in that area? Are they going to consider all the traffic flow that's going to maybe going through those roads? Because it's going to be a place where people are going to want to go for not only commercial, but also for the preserve, as well as the residents living there. So I hope the Department of Transportation and the commission considers the traffic flow. So also, because I don't have experience in city building or how things are laid out, in your experience making this zone change, do you, in your public or private experience, have you ever gone through a zone change like this, and what are the results of it typically? You're looking for the impact behind it. Do you have any experience in that?
We did have a request in the last couple of years when I was mayor with the old fuel depot property. They were trying to get the entrance of the part of the old plat of Lynn Haven changed from single-family residential to a mixed-use area. And the commission at that time did turn that down because they were trying to put a 5-story condo at the entrance to the fuel depot property in the middle of a single-family, single-story area. So yes, that's the only time that I remember since I've been mayor that we voted on something like that.
Okay, so looking at all your other, counties, cities, and commissions, doing research as you guys go out to Panama City Beach and look at other ordinances, looking at maybe all those other different properties in cities, municipalities, does it look like this kind of zoning would be beneficial to the city of Lynn Haven and its residents?
I have my own opinion, which
Yes,
I want more information before I, really voice it. I have an opinion at this point, but I think I also need some more information before I would make a decision. Based on what I'm hearing tonight, I think it's a bad decision. But I still would like to educate myself further.
Understood. Thank you so much for your time.
Anybody else on the commission want to reply to his question? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to monopolize that.
I'll speak to it.
Sure.
What the mayor just spoke of, the fuel depot, was a nightmare. A nightmare. And the minute I started reading about it and talking to the folks that live out there, it just kept going around and around in my head. We were seeing the same thing again. Just bad judgment and poor decisions being made by a developer. I can't imagine. I would think you'd all have to work the night shift just to get in and out of your houses. When school's coming and going, I just can't imagine living in that. And of course, the mistrust that you have too, because there's still no playground 15 years later. I mean, when this whole thing started, it just seems unbelievable to me. So yeah, we can't really say how we feel, but you can tell how I feel.
Thank you again for your time.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak before we move further? Okay, so did I miss anyone? No. Item number 14 was it's a public hearing, and we started it at about half an hour ago, and we've had a lot of good information, I think, from many different people. So this is discussion and possible approval of the transmittal of a large-scale future land use amendment application, ESR 20-1 by resolution. I am, as mayor, I'm not allowed to make a motion, but I do want to express a concern. I personally would like more discussion. I would like maybe a second workshop, maybe with, I know I cut Mr. Slanina off because I was trying to be equitable to everyone, but I think some of the information that he said, I would like to hear some more of it, but I also listened to all the residents, and I didn't hear one happy resident, I didn't hear one happy person in this room about going forward with this. And so I just think that we all need some more information, some more discussion, some more time to think about this. So you hear what I'm asking for, I think.
I'll make a motion that we table it until we get
Thank
more
you.
information.
Thank you.
And
I'll second that.
So there's a motion that we would table this, and a second. Would it be equitable for everyone, or acceptable that we just for the next meeting
Second
that we
workshop.
continue this discussion? Okay. Is there any discussion from the rest of the commission? Any from the public? Okay, Ms. Gaynor, would you please call the roll that we approve tabling this to the next meeting for more discussion, more input from residents?
Commissioner Tender,
yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. So we will continue this discussion at the next commission meeting. In the meantime, please email us, talk to us. We heard what you said tonight, and we'll see. Maybe we could set up a workshop before the next meeting. Maybe the other side can present some of their proposals and interest to you, maybe let you know what's going on, and then we can all come to some kind of consensus the same way we did with the food trucks tonight, okay? All right, take care. And thank you all
Mayor,
for
may-
being here. Thank
Mayor,
you.
may I ask something real quick?
Sorry, just a minute. Commissioner Russell?
Our next meeting is at 9 a.m. You may want to poll the audience
Yep.
to see if they could be here tonight, or push it back to the
Would
meet
you,
for-
whatever, just by a show of hands, would you prefer to push this to the first May meeting, which is an evening meeting? Table it to the May meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, first May meeting. So could we have a motion to amend that? Do we have to table that, or? Excuse me,
I think
April.
April would.
I'm skipping a month, sorry. The first meeting in April, thank you. Thank you very much. Do we need another motion to do that?
What's that? I think it would be appropriate
Okay.
since the previous motion
Pardon
was
me?
specific.
I think we're probably okay with the information that you gave us tonight. Don't everybody feel? Yeah. Thank you, though. Thank you very much. So could I have an amended motion that we change this to the first meeting in April so that it will be an evening meeting and everyone can attend?
Yes, Mayor. I make a motion, amended a motion that we table this until the April meeting at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
Second.
And there's been a second. Any further discussion? Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. So we'll see you first meeting in April at 6 p.m. Item number 15 is a discussion and possible approval of the addition of a new personnel policy, number 154, providing personal leave time for full and part-time employees. City manager has a report for us on that.
Yes, Mayor. After many town hall meetings with all of the staff, got some really great input back from staff. One of the things I found out is that we have a lot of staff members who have children that they have to either go to court for, or adoption issues, or parent-teacher conferences, meeting with contractors, so many things, and they were having to use their PTO time for that. I am proposing that we give staff 3 days, 24 hours of personal time for those kinds of personal issues that they are not imposed on their vacation time. This will be managed by the department head, the HR, and the city manager.
Mayor, if I may?
Please go ahead.
I make a motion that we accept, what's the number? Policy 154.
I'll second
Second.
that.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second.
3 seconds.
Is there any discussion?
Vote.
No discussion?
I think it's a great idea.
Any from the public? Mrs. Gaynor, please call the roll.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, that stands approved. Item number 16, this is the first reading of ordinance. If we could have order in the commission room, please. Item number 16 is the first reading of ordinance number 1091, adopting the City of Panama City Beach and Bay County's disorderly conduct ordinance. There's no action necessary tonight. It's just a first reading. Mrs. Gaynor?
An ordinance of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending Chapter 38, Section 38-1 of the Code of Ordinances, providing criminal punishment of misdemeanor, criminal acts within city limits of the City of Lynn Haven, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing an immediately effective date.
Thank you. Although there's no action necessary, our police chief had placed this on the agenda. He's not here. Oh,
He's
there you
here.
are. I didn't see you. I'm sorry. Did you have any comments you wanted to make, Chief Ramey? Okay, there's no comments, and this is the first reading. Are there any comments, concerns, discussion from the commission? Any from the public? There appears to be none. Moving on to item number 17, first reading of ordinance number 1092, adopting the City of Panama City Beach and Bay County's disorderly conduct ordinance. No action necessary. This was placed on the agenda again by Police Chief Ricky Ramey. Mrs. Gaynor, would you please read the ordinance 1092?
An ordinance of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, adopting an ordinance related to disorderly conduct, providing for definitions and penalties for the commission of an act of disorderly conduct, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, providing for inclusion into the code, and providing an immediately effective date.
Thank you. Is there any discussion from the commission? Questions? Any from the public? There appear to be none. So we will move on to item number 18. This was placed on the agenda by me, the mayor. Discussion and possible approval for city staff to develop a plan of action in the event of a pandemic emergency. Not necessarily even this one, and not necessarily even a pandemic. There are many types of emergencies that a city can experience besides weather. And one of the things that I did this week after the governor has now raised the level to 2, and there are some plans in effect for the state. And so I had met with our mayor and our city emergency director, which is the fire chief, John DeLange, and asked them to, with the commission's approval, to move forward with staff in developing a plan for future emergencies, and which we would decide if tomorrow, for example, the governor said, you know, we'd like everyone to work from home, we'd like you to stay at home as much as possible, something like that, and not necessarily for this emergency, but for any emergency, that we would know immediately who the staff would be that would stay in place, who would work from home, what the plan would be for the city. We have nothing in writing right now. We've addressed weather emergencies before, but I think that would be a really good idea, and I'm just asking for the commission's approval for our staff to go forward in writing a plan. Our technical director, Graham Neves, that he would be able to help our employees to have the right software so they could work from home if they needed to, so that the city could function at the highest rate possible to serve the residents in the event of any type of emergency. So that's what I'm asking for a motion, just to write this plan.
Mayor, I don't think a plan of any kind is ever a bad idea, so I'll make the motion to go along with that. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. So there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion from the commission? Any from the public? There appears to be none. Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so it stands approved. Moving to our final item, number 19, is discussion and possible approval of the legislative appropriations paving projects. And this was our Public Works Director spoke with us briefly at the beginning of the meeting. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that, Mr. Baker? Any questions for Mr. Baker from the commission? This is to set in motion the paving of several roads and get the projects going again. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's been a motion.
Second.
And a second. Is there any further discussion or questions from the commission from Mr. Baker? Any from the public? There appear to be none. Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, and so that stands approved. We'll move to item number 20. This meeting is adjourned, and thank you all so much for coming and participating.